Wait a minute, Adam. You haven't seen Black Cauldron?
You really haven't seen The Thing?
What about the Warriors?
Let's remedy that. Welcome back to Raised by Spoilers, everyone, where we watch and unpack cult movies. Joining us tonight, we have the Keeper of Keys, the Seeker of Secrets, the Aes Sedai herself, Waifu Amanda.
Yo.
The Feminist Warlord, Nintendo Geek, everybody's goth mommy.
I'm glad to be here, suckers!
Oh my god. And the deadliest DM himself, Plebeian Adam.
I've come out to play!
Ooh, that was loud.
Tonight's movie, we wear our colors in this urban western cult classic, filmed simply named The Warriors, with a budget of $44 million. The heavily synth-scored film made roughly $3 to $5 million at the box office, later making $22 million with DVD sales and future screenings.
Budget was $4 million.
Was it 4?
44 million. I was going to say.
No, $4 million. I apologize.
I say 44 million. They could have made a better movie with that amount of money.
Maybe.
They made some good bank then for
did.
$4 million to
did.
22.
You got to remember with 22.5 though, that is DVD sales and stuff like that, because the movie had later become a cult film, and they had future screenings.
Ah,
And
okay.
the Rockstar game also skyrocketed sales with that. So before we actually jump in, just so everybody has an idea, the 70s were a wild time for Hollywood. Hungry younger directors and studios willing to take chances saw notable movies that came out in 79, following as Mad Max, The Black Hole, Alien, and Annabelle Horror, Phantasm, Star Trek The Motion Pictures, The Muppets Movie, Kramer vs. Kramer, Meatballs, Life of Brian, Rocky II, The Jerk, and 007's Moonraker.
Wait, The Jerk, the comedy one?
Yeah.
Really?
Came out in 79.
Wow.
Wow.
The Warriors also came out that year. So I ask as we start our show, did you dig it?
Okay, this is one of those things where there have been movies that have come out since this movie
Yeah.
that have done this idea
Yeah.
far better.
Sure.
But the fact that this came out in 79
Yep.
and it still is this good
It's pretty all right, eh?
means that it's pretty all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty all right.
But given the fact that it's still pretty all right, I could only imagine the experience watching this in 79.
Well, yeah, you smoked a joint and you had...
I've smoked an illegal joint.
You smoked an illegal joint, and you're always either looking over your shoulder for cops or gangs in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the history itself of the film is pretty wild. Feminist Warlord, what do you think? First impressions?
Oh, well, I've seen this before.
Yeah, this is not your first viewing.
Oh, my God, yeah. I was one of the ones of the group being like, we need to watch The Warriors. I think this got put up. We were supposed to watch other movies, but I'm like, no, we got to watch The Warriors.
I was
like,
going to comment on that.
So I kind of pushed it up the line a little bit
Fair
just because I love it so much.
Amanda?
You know what? I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. It's so cheesy and it's so ridiculous, and I just feel like it's one of those movies where what's the gang movie, the recent one where it's like a musical, it's based on like the Shakespeare play.
Oh, you're talking not Gangs in New York. Oh my God. My mom's favorite movie.
Yeah.
It's actually my mom's favorite.
So I for some reason every
West
time
Side Story?
That's the
yes,
one.
it kind of reminded me
The
of
Spielberg
like
one or the one before?
I don't even know. But I expected all the gangs to come out and like as they're walking on the road just start like snapping and like doing a little like dance as they're going down the street. Like it just felt so it was a giant cheese fest, and their costumes are so ridiculous, and I still kind of loved it. Every actor in the movie looked like he was one step up from Cro-Magnon. So I mean, it's an experience. It really was.
I do have to add that I don't get the feeling there. I don't feel the cheese, but I do feel ridiculousness in it. Like the gangs were just really over much in it, but I don't see that as cheese.
No,
it's something else.
You're right. It's not cheesy, but it's unintentional cheese because they really did like take itself seriously, and I feel like it was meant to be a serious gang film, but it wasn't. It really wasn't.
That's why we started with the introduction with the director, where he kind of vibed it out to say, "Hey, listen, the idea and the concept was necessarily to do a Spartan film."
Yeah.
But to do something in a comic book era. And that was heavily handed by the studio. Because originally, he wanted to have Black and Hispanic people mainly be the cast.
Well, that
West
was
Side
how
Story
the book-
itself came out in 61.
Oh, did it
So
really?
that was the general vibe
I didn't know that.
of the Puerto Ricans and the different gangs and
Yeah.
the different
Yeah.
cultures and communities. So instead of cultural appropriation or just kind of shining a spotlight on those people, the studio went, ham it up.
Yeah.
You've got the baseball boys. You've got the roller boys, the wizards, the karate crew, like
Yeah,
because of those
okay.
different cultures,
The Electro Boys.
within movie franchise, or not franchises, but movie cultures in a way. Instead of just saying the blacks, the Hispanics, the Jewish gang, it was like it was a little bit right.
Yeah,
it was a
like,
little
yeah.
bit different.
Well, that's how the original book was written, apparently.
Right.
I haven't read it, but apparently it was not like a bunch of white gangs.
So
Studio
it was
didn't wanna make
taken
that.
more seriously.
It was a lot more
it
diverse.
was more realistic
Okay.
in the sense of, yeah, you've got you've got the Spanish, you've got the blacks, you've got the whites. All that was what it was more supposed to be, and the studio wasn't willing to have that discussion.
Because there would be fights in the theater.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they wanted
Fights
to make it
in
more
track.
fantastic, like not such like science fiction, but more fantasy based. Like this is a made up New York.
Oh yeah, I got the strong feeling. So when they were first showing off some of the gangs, during the intro credits, I guess I think my first brain was going. My first thoughts were going through the West Side. No, the oh my god, I'm having terrible memory.
It's
Tonight.
okay. Take a deep breath. It's fine.
Orange.
Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange.
Right.
That kind of gang.
Yeah.
Like the very dramatized,
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. They did. I want to say you were saying feminist warlord. Realistically, I won't take credit for this one. There was 100 gangs, 200 gangs.
I think the original list that they gave the costume designer, I want to say they said it was 200.
Yeah, and they had to design different outfits for each one.
Based
Patches,
on
embroidery
based
work,
on just
all
seeing
of
the
it.
name,
crazy.
Just on her like getting a list and seeing the name of it, that's where she came up with all these like. It has to be
Styles.
out there somewhere that
Well,
there's like hand drawn concept art of every
Patches
gang.
and costume work.
Cyrus during his speech says how many gangs are because I think that everyone sent 9 delegates
Yeah.
Yeah.
from each gang, and that's his whole shtick. Is this is not just 9 people from every gang? Imagine those people plus their
Yeah.
bigger part of it.
It was like
Right.
100 at the meeting, plus 100 more that were less, like the orphans.
Yeah.
And then plus affiliates and smaller gangs. So there's like, he said like 60,000.
Street militia.
Yeah, so that's probably
Yeah.
where that 100 gang number comes from.
Yeah,
Is from
there
that
was-
speech.
Yeah.
So to spin the plot real quick, a peace treaty is proposed. The gangs of New York are gathered under the information and the announcement of a head leader named Cyrus. He proposes to join the
Well, he's
gangs.
the leader of the biggest gang.
the Riffs.
The Riffs.
The Riffs. He's the leader of the
Grimacy
Riffs.
Riffs.
And he proposes that they diminish their turf and all unite against the police and the government within the city. And they seize the island.
Yes.
And then he is murdered.
Publicly,
Executed.
but no one knows who it was. A secret shot from the dark.
The warriors are blamed. And that starts our journey as they try to make it all the way back to Coney Island. And that's the movie
Yeah, it really is.
in the nutshell. But now we can take like completely apart without actually doing the plot and jump around because that is
the plot.
That's
Yeah,
the plot.
that-
And
it's not real- it's not real deep.
No, but it's thin enough where you have character moments and flaws.
Yeah.
And you see the city of New York itself become a character in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what's so famous. That's why a lot of people do movies in New York. Because as we were discussing with Amanda here, I think you guys have been to New York, right?
Yeah, we've been,
You two, and I've been to New York.
Yeah.
I have never been to New York.
And you've never been to New York. So there's a lot of these scenes in New York where like, oh my God. I'm like, no, that's just New York
That's
even nowadays.
fucking New York, man.
Like that is, New York has a character. It
Yeah.
has personality.
My question was, is this a set or is this just what New York looks like? Because it is very dirty and dingy and scary and just ridiculous.
So it is Mostly, I think there's only 2 spots. I think it's like you said, it's one of the platforms is the abandoned one.
Yeah.
And then I think they had to make 2 made up sets. I don't know which. I don't know if it's part of the Coney Island.
Probably
or,
the bathroom one where they
Maybe,
busted it
yeah.
up during the
Yeah.
fight.
but
Well,
most
yeah.
of it is
Choreography.
them shooting at night, which they did go on to say it was difficult because it was the summer, and also New York nights are really short. So
Really?
the sun sets at 10 o'clock at night and it rises at like 5:30 in the morning.
Oh.
So they only have like 6-7 hours with breaks and
Yeah, you
lunch.
have to take an
and
hour lunch.
Yeah.
So your
So-
shooting time is half.
They had to make it look more dingy, and also the director, or not the director, the producer, one of them was like, "Okay, it's in the summer. It's gonna rain. Like, what is the chances that we're gonna film and not have it rain at least once or twice?"
True.
So that's why they put the rainstorm right in the beginning when they're like running, in order for them just to be able to hose down the sets.
So for consistency, they kept everything wet.
To make
Yeah,
it look more
okay.
grungy too, because it made it look
Yeah,
more
it does- it
grungy.
definitely
Because it's
helps.
easier to keep a dry place wet than it is
Yeah.
to dry up a wet place.
Right,
So
Because in
they-
the summer it rains like every other day.
That is really clever directing.
And then you have the concept of the lights. The whole backstory and background of this film is it's a crew of guys that knew how to cut corners, and they did it remarkably well.
Yeah.
Where the lighting itself with the wet asphalt almost reflects the lights from the
So it enhances the lighting.
so it
of
looks
the
almost like
scene.
a comic book, and it looks deeper and pulled through.
and that's why it looks so grungy, because everything was just wet and dirty,
Grimy and muddy.
Yeah.
And no, it worked. It honestly
But
really
that's
worked.
just New York.
Except it
I
was
never want to go to New York.
except the other thing you got to remember is dirty and grungy, and it's a movie set lit professionally.
Sure, yeah.
So imagine all of the lights off. So like the scene where they're running from the baseball furies and you're just getting silhouettes and they're just running and breathing heavily. That's normally what it would have been in Central Park at the
Yeah.
time. They had to put lights in the trees and you don't even really see them because it just looks like lights from buildings as they're running because those shots are
Yes.
so quick
yeah.
to light the park because it was way too dark. And they had to shut down certain parts of Central Park to keep the gangs out while
Yeah.
they were filming.
And a lot of, especially if you take that into account and how dark that scene, all of the scenes were really, really dark. A lot of silhouettes and half lit faces. If you take a look at that and you compare how much light they were actually flooding into that scene, we're getting like 10%. What we're seeing is 10% of the light. If you were filming there, it probably looked like it was daytime. Probably looked like
Right.
floodlights
Oh, yeah,
daytime.
absolutely.
But because of the way film doesn't really pull in all the light, it looks dark to us. So just imagine how really dark that place would be.
Right.
Well, and this is also the 70s too, where they didn't really have good lighting, like the LED lights and all the really good high efficiency lighting. It was the sodium lamps and halogen lighting and that dingy orange, washed out, like shitty lighting that was so prevalent in most cities. So in order to kind of like, I don't know, even get that level of lighting, they would have probably had to have had like major floodlights.
And that's exactly why the subway stations and the subway cars look the way they do. That's why they almost seem blue because they have double the amount of subway light bulbs in the cars
Yeah.
to flood the whole thing with light.
Yeah.
Because those subway bulbs originally were like gray.
Yeah.
So you're just
Yeah.
riding the subway trying not to fucking touch anything because everything's dirty and it's gray light. It's yellowy. It's just gross, right? But it would have just washed everybody out.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing that is the choice of the color palette within this film: blues, reds, grays and whites, yellows. That you flip through an old Jack Kirby comic book, something Marvel. It's the same color scheme and palette that you would normally pull.
So do you get, I know that now with the director's cut and this guy's talking about
Yeah.
it, do you think that the director, because it sounds like the director didn't originally intend this to be comic booky, because he sounded like he wanted to be more like the book, which was more serious, more actually talking about the gangs, but the comic book came out during the, no, you can't talk about that kind of stuff. So then he hammed it up and really went into it.
The director himself has gone on record saying the movie he was on lost funding. So he rebounded when a producer and one of his agents called him to say, "Hey, here's a movie. Do you want to do this one? And you'll have to do it over the summer in like 2 months." So the idea is they bought the rights to the book because it was originally found on a shelf without a cover.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
Yeah,
they
because
read
it's not
it,
a
they
comic. It's a
loved it.
novel, the original one.
They read
Yeah.
it. They loved it. They called the publishing company and they auctioned the rights out with their own money. So they bought it and then they shopped it around, turned it into a couple scripts. And this was kind of like a little late night project that they were working on. So when a movie fell flat, a bigger studio said, hey, we'll invest, make a summer hit, but you have 2 months and this much money.
Yeah.
And they had to kind of put it together
This
as
is
fast
time
as they could.
between other shoots. Like,
This is a quick buck.
Yeah.
And a turnaround. And
the studio lost a little bit of money on this thing, but they don't want to come out of a complete loss. So
Right.
you've got an opportunity that no one else does, but you've got to do it on a budget, and you got to do it fucking quick.
now, so that's hence why the casting is mainly New York native dominance, where everybody was in the city and was from the city, kind of thing. So they flew to New York and they said, we're filming in New York and we have 2 months to do this.
I mean, I think that works out because everyone felt like they were from New York.
Yeah.
There are some other movies where you'll watch it and they're like, oh no, we're from this other city. And hey, we speak with a New York accent. You're like, whoa, hey.
Tom Holland from fucking Britain.
Well, yeah.
Spider-Man himself doesn't sound like he's from New York.
Exactly. That's a great example. So it's nice to see that they all do that. But what shocked me the most is I had seen snippets of Cyrus's speech. And when that was right at the beginning, I sat there like, oh no. I always thought this scene was like the act 3, we're all together, boys, we're fighting the system. I thought this was a fight the system kind of movie. And this was Cyrus's, we're banding together to fight the government and the cops. Nope, I was fucking wrong.
Dude,
that's the beginning of the problem.
The whole thing falls apart and it shows the pettiness of each individual crime.
Yeah.
And each individual gang's own pettiness for them to organize and be their own worst enemy. So everything Cyrus was hoping for diminishes and falls apart immediately.
Yes.
That no one goes, he was right. They all go, what a load of bullshit. And now look at us fighting over petty land.
Yeah.
Your turf.
Yeah, it's a good speech.
Yeah.
It's a good speech.
I really got Martin Luther King vibes
Yeah.
from that speech.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's what they were trying to channel, was that like, hey, we need to stick together. And everyone's like, nah, you're a crock of shit. Like,
No, everyone was
whatever.
believing him. What?
Well,
yeah.
at first, until he died.
Yeah, I went through this weird journey where at first it reminded me of Lawrence Fishburne in Matrix.
Oh yeah, Resurrection.
Yeah.
Reloaded or whatever.
Whichever one, the one where he's in the cave having
We're
the
gonna
sex.
shake this cave. This
Ah.
orgy cave is gonna rumble.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh my god, you gotta rewatch the Matrix movies.
Yeah, the sex rave cave.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So I first reminded me of that and went, oh wait, no, it's not really Fishburne that I'm remembering. It's Martin Luther King because he was basing his off Martin Luther King. And then when he got shot, I'm like, oh my god, that's a little too on point, my friend.
It is, but what are you gonna do?
I mean, that's
right?
what the novel was, right? So, I mean, I kind of get it.
It was a very, for being air quotes, the future. Like there's nothing
there's
about
nothing
this movie that
futuristic.
was supposed to be the future. But at the beginning, they said sometime in the future.
Well, they did,
Well,
did
from
that
the future,
because
from the Greek story.
the Greek story of the Spartans.
Oh, they were comparing it from the
Yeah.
future of the Greek
the
Spartans.
Spartans were trying to go
okay.
back to home.
I thought they were trying to imply that it was our future, like it was
No.
an
Yeah, I got
indistinct
that too.
It's like
future.
1979, 78 when the film is kind of taking place, and these warriors in red robes
Yeah, yeah.
are trying to get back to the ocean.
Yeah,
They tell you
I
the
get
movie
it.
in the beginning of the movie.
Well, I got
Yeah.
that, but I thought the implication was that this movie took place in an indistinct future.
No. This is just 70s mob rule leaning into the 80s where everything starts to fall apart.
All right, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah,
Like this isn't the future. This is just early 80s.
Yeah, no.
I got the same. I was
Oh,
under the
fuck.
same confusion, so I totally get it.
But I do like how I can see why the director wanted to add that entrance of like,
Yeah.
we're telling a Spartan story.
Right.
Because I can see the world. I got it. Like even without that intro,
The
I
intro
understood
and
it.
the editing. The thing is that stuff is edited and added to later on. I think that's the 2003, 2005 cut of the film.
Which is what we watched.
It's usually the only one you can find now.
I think the first time I watched it, I want to say it didn't have any of that. So the teacher, like
He might have had an older copy.
he had an older copy
Yeah.
because when I first got it on DVD and watched it for the first time, I'm like, what is all this weird comic book transition? Because I had seen it the first time, I think, without that.
Right.
And it just was a normal movie.
I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't. I liked the discussion of, hey, this is a Spartan movie. You know, this is a Greek tale retold, or whatever you want to call it. But I'm not a huge fan of the comic panel stuff.
That's fair. I mean, in 2003 or 2005, whenever that copy came out, it fucking blew my mind. I think I was in grade 9.
Yeah.
I was in grade 9, so this was just like, holy shit.
I don't feel...
I've seen Blade. You know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
By then, things like Sin City hadn't come out,
No.
I don't think.
No.
So that whole comic book Frank Miller style thing didn't exist. So yeah, that would be more unique back then.
Yeah, I mean, now it kind of doesn't hold up as well because it looks like a Windows 95 or Windows XP photo editor frame kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But you kind of get the idea of what they were trying to go for.
Yeah, I just don't think it added any value to the transitions. I almost think it kind of like pulled you out of whatever was going on
Yeah.
The
into
editing-
this weird, like vaguely rotoscoped looking transition. And you're like, ah, yeah, okay, I guess. But
The editing is a little bit more jumpy in the original cut.
Well,
No.
So
Okay.
showed
you
a
either
few
get the
scenes.
meanwhile or you're just fucking in a different location without any dialogue.
Well, there was a
Okay,
couple that
that's
it did transition to because I forget what scene it was particularly, but it went from the Warriors hard cut to I forget his name, but the one of the rogues, like the rogue guy that shot Cyrus.
Yeah.
He was just on the phone, and
Oh,
it's
I
like,
remember-
well,
yeah, I know
that
what you're
was
talking
like
about.
jarring. So that's how the original was. It was literally like, bang, and then you're at the other character.
Yeah.
There
Now,
was no.
as someone who watched the original movie,
Mm-hmm.
was I don't know what you want to call it, the broadcaster lady? I don't think they ever gave her a name or anything like that.
The voice.
The voice, yeah. Was she in the original?
Oh yeah,
cut?
that's
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that,
all
that
original.
is
That
original.
is so stylistic. I love that as a form of communication and things like that. That was so cool.
So they use a disc jockey or a radio DJ to communicate with the street gangs through the radio.
Yeah.
To feed them information and keep everyone informed on where to go or what street that the Warriors are headed next.
Well, it's like the Rift gang, which was like the main boss gang, who Cyrus was the leader of. They want to get vengeance for their leader's death. So with their power, they're feeding information to the disc jockey, who's feeding information to the gangs to go after the Warriors, and then the Rifts would have their spy network or whatever,
Right.
getting them information, then they'd relaying it to the other gangs
Right.
through the radio. It was
Yeah.
really cool.
Well,
Right.
the Rifts are the largest gang.
Yeah.
And that's why Cyrus was the leader of them. Like, he basically ran the Gramercy Park area, which is like a...
Big city.
Yeah, like one of the larger parts of the city. And
Yeah.
they didn't really have a lot of rivals. Like, they were more respected.
Yeah, probably because it looked like they reminded me of the gang that was based on Bruce Lee, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
They were that classic
Growing up
martial
watching
arts.
the martial arts movies and that
Yeah.
franchise, that Wu-Tang Clan
with
style.
the-
Yeah,
with the
Absolutely, though.
silk Playboy robes.
Well, the geese.
the geese,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were geese, but they were rogues.
It's the
Yeah.
80s. This is what you could get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was reminded of. But I think there is a few things that took me out. I think the actors, because they pulled them so quick, it explains that they pulled them quickly all from New York, weren't that great. I'm sorry.
Oh
but-
yeah, they're all young, and this is their first movies. These are movies that are
Yeah.
like, oh my god, this is a role. I'm gonna fucking get it. I'm gonna get it, and go on and do stuff. I don't necessarily know if all of them went on to do stuff, but a lot of this was their first movies.
I would hesitate to call half of them even actors. They're probably just people who are like, hey, we need bodies. Here's a casting call. Can you read? Good. Okay, here you go.
So, fun fact, originally, going back to the beginning, like the meeting
Yeah.
in the park, Cyrus was supposed to actually be played by a real gang leader. He mysteriously disappeared the day before shooting. And they don't know what happened to
And
him.
they don't talk. They don't say
doesn't
anything.
So
surprise me at
who's
all.
the actor of Cyrus?
No, that like they had to get him
They
last,
get
minute.
minute.
Last
And
minute.
also
Good
a
pick.
lot of the a lot of the extras in the background of that scene were actual gang members.
That makes sense.
They had about
That
100
wouldn't surprise me.
extras on
Yeah.
set.
So they just pulled anybody, but real gang members were a part of that scene
Sure, because that's what the populace of New York is. So
time.
that's what you're going to get.
at the time.
The
Yeah.
riot itself is interesting because when you see them all freak the fuck out, what it's actually going on is you have your main set, and then there are 3 rings, and everyone is running clockwise or counterclockwise depending on the ring. So it looks like it's just utter chaos without anyone getting trampled or falling or getting beat up.
And they
So when
had
all of the shit is hitting the fan, everyone's just running in a circle,
And they
they're just
had,
filming the chaos of that.
they had undercover cops and like plainclothes cops in there too, just to make sure that the actual gang members weren't messing with each other in the chaos.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Dude, it's a wild
You know
movie
what?
to make. Kind
They
of thing.
could choreograph that, but they can't choreograph a fight scene with baseball bats.
These guys aren't I mean, it's roughly some of their first movies, and I think the budget stands where how would someone actually fight versus a choreographer?
We're jumping ahead. We're jumping way ahead.
Wow,
of the
we're not.
theories.
No,
Yeah,
we're
we're
all over
not
the
going to
place.
that. I do have to admit the choreography for at least the baseball fight, it wasn't so bad in the bathroom, but the baseball fight was rough. And all I was reminded of, have you guys ever seen Robin Hood Men in Tights? Mm-hmm. There's a scene on a bridge, and they've got two sticks, and the main character and Little John is doing the, just hitting the sticks cross into each other, like bang, bang, back and forth, up, left, and right.
Yep.
And it snaps in half, and then they keep doing that
Yep.
until eventually they're on little twigs.
Yep.
That's all it reminded me of, because that's what they were doing in the defense. That was their choreography.
Do you know what you're describing? Kurosawa films.
I know Kurosawa films do a different thing.
That's
They've
what
got
they're trying to do, though.
no, they're.
I have watched the commentary on this film. That is what they're trying to do.
Well, they didn't do a
I
good
have
job.
watched the thing on Robin Hood Men in Tights. They are trying to do Kurosawa as best as they can without any of that training.
Oh no, yeah, okay. They did not succeed at that whatsoever.
Also, the actor who played Swan,
Yeah.
you can see it in the movie in this cut now that I was looking for it. I don't know which, I think it was the Baseball Fury with either the yellow or the green. Mm-hmm. He hit him so hard with the bat in the side, he actually broke the stuntman's ribs. Oh. And he didn't find out about it until the reunion like a couple of years ago. Oh. He had no idea he actually hurt the stuntman that bad.
Oh,
and you can see in the guy's face, like he's like in pain before he falls. And it's like,
Oh, it looks real.
Yeah, they took some shot, like when they just swung the bat and hit someone in the gut, there were some shots that I felt.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But it was just the choreography of the attack defense that just wasn't there.
Well, the fact that if he's using rubber bats
Yeah.
to swing and hit somebody, and it could at least break some ribs, or they're not using rubber bats.
I think they were real bats.
at all.
I think
'cause
they were
that's
real
what the
bats. I didn't see any. I didn't see
no
like
live
any
ammunition, but it's like just make it look real. Just hit them with the bat a couple times, swing, swing, and it's like fucking people's fingers and arms and ribs and shit are getting actually hurt, and it's like,
yeah.
oh, this is fast and loose filmmaking in the 70s.
That totally makes sense. I think the movie kind of kept me getting, like, I couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
Because a combination of some of the bad acting, a combination of the cuts were kind of drew me out of it a few times.
That's fair.
But I think ultimately, as a cult movie, I can see how it got that status. I suspect this is probably one of the first of the survive from point A to point B types of movies. I don't know of one like it before this. Maybe there was some, but I don't recall it.
I can't name any.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, especially for a gang movie, and then the idea of the cultural hit that is New York City, the gangs, the time period, not even like the 80s synth or any of that. It just the
well, this wasn't really 80s synth. This was more like 70s
This is
rock.
New York. This is New York
Like-
disco.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, the music that
Yeah.
they played was the Eagles, the Doors. I mean, it wasn't them, but it was like them.
Sure.
It was that
Usher.
style.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean.
Spiritual, whatever.
Well, quite frankly,
version.
the ending song is Joe Walsh from
Yeah.
the Eagles. So like,
Yeah.
that it all fits with that style. But I think this movie did have a bad part of it where there are certain, I don't know how to word it. There are certain movies where they when you tell a story, there's because of that this happens.
Yeah.
And this one has the bad effect, which is and then this happens.
Yeah.
I felt there were a lot of things that were disconnected that their actions didn't, perpetuate their next steps.
Right.
They would just basically, an event would happen. They'd finally get to the next train, the next checkpoint,
Yep.
the next save, and then some other gang, and it was a whole other event, but they weren't tied together. The only thing that was tied together is they were all chasing them.
Right.
That was it. But a decision made in the first checkpoint didn't impact the events of a second checkpoint.
Yeah, they never learned from their mistakes. They never changed plans based on new information. It was just, okay, we're going to keep doing the same thing and hope it works.
The subway was like the tie to the movie. Like everything tied back to the subway.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, like they didn't make decisions. Like a good example is they went from getting beaten up by the cops at one of the stations when they got out of the train and they were waiting, and then they split off, and then one of them just meets a female gang. Like the cops the cops were just another gang, I guess, in this regard,
Yeah.
which makes sense because to me, cops are just gangs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the Lizzies, I think they were smart. They knew they would be taking they knew who they were, and
Yeah.
they knew like, hey, there's only like one route to Coney Island.
But their actions prior to that didn't impact their situation with the Lizzies.
I guess they split up. I think if the gang stayed together, I don't think they would have felt, because I think Swan would have been like, "No, man, we gotta go."
Maybe.
But because they got split up and they're like, "Hey, they're not here yet. We have time."
Yeah, that's
We're literally hanging out. Do you want to go drink a beer and fucking grab a boob?
yeah.
It's not a great leap in logic. A lot of it isn't, but I think it's the youth. It is the culture around it. I mean, if you look at when Ajax gets arrested, it's literally hey, do you want to help me rape this girl?
Yeah,
And
he
it's
was
like,
a
Yeah,
Right,
that
like,
was weird.
Yeah, man,
He
because
was
there's
a
like that's the whole thing.
not
It's like,
great
oh, let's go have
character.
some fun. Let's go
I
have some
hated him the
fun.
whole time.
And it's like, fuck. And even the actor's like, yeah, Ajax a piece of shit. I loved working on the film. Everybody, we're all boys still. Like, it's great. Like, it's a fun movie to be in.
Yeah.
They love it. They know
Camaraderie
their
from it.
lines still to this day, especially even in interviews. But he's like, oh, my character was a bastard. Oh, I had to go. Like, it hurts, but it sucks.
Well,
but it's
could
also
you
like,
imagine, just like not to go into detail about it, but if he would have stayed with them when they went to the Lizzies,
right.
Oh,
they would have
God.
killed him.
They would've
and
killed him.
rightfully
Yeah.
so.
And the idea with the Lizzies looks like it was more of them saying, okay, the Riffs want them alive. How do we get them drunk?
Yeah.
Get them
High.
asleep? Lock them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that part of the story, I think I made a comment, I think it was Galahad in one of the Arthurian tales, where the Galahad is in his quest for the Holy Grail is tempted with basically sin, sexual sin, and he has to keep himself pure, and he snaps out of it. I think one of the other knights come and saves him or something like that, or he saves someone else. But that reminded me of a very, very Arthurian story of these. There's two guys who are falling air quotes to sin.
Yep.
And there's one, the Galahad, who's like,
Yeah, he's like,
Right.
something
Something's
isn't
not
right.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
The younger one, he's like, let's get out of here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I liked that. I thought that was a really cool idea. Obviously, I don't know what it would have felt like in 79, but for me, it was like, yeah, that's a gang of chicks. Like, that was right.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw them, they were posing on the
Oh
side
yeah, with the
waiting for them.
umbrellas, like
And they all
waiting for
had
them.
they tried to hide it. I think they did it kind of subtly, but they all had that colored shirt on the
Yeah,
inside.
yeah.
So, but each of them had a little bit showing, and like they're all wearing this.
Yeah.
That's
The
their
colors.
colors.
That's the
Yeah.
colors, man.
But they weren't
Uh-oh.
expecting to run into a female gang.
Yeah.
Right.
That is actually something that threw me off is I was always really annoyed that they kept stopping, that they're dumb enough to keep stopping, and that they always thought home would be safe. But then they had the conversation at Lizzie's when Lizzie made a comment of like, you're the ones that killed Cyrus. And they're like, wait, whoa. That's when they all went.
They don't know why they're running.
They don't know why they're running. Well, they're just trying to run to just get out of the chaos. They just want to get caught by cops. And it seems like
Yeah.
they're trying to get out of everyone else's territory. They just want to get to their
Right.
Yeah,
territory.
they think they're getting attacked because the truce is off.
Yeah, and they're in someone else's territory.
Right.
But then when that gets said, you can see the light bulbs go,
We're fucked.
We're more fucked than we thought we were.
We're fucked.
Like, we can't,
Yeah.
getting home's not
There
going to
is
save
no
us.
home. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
the fact that, and I didn't catch on to it until after that. I'm like, wait, I forgot they didn't know, but Fox, the one who fell onto the tracks.
And gets killed by the subway.
It's like, why didn't he stay? Like, he is the one that got accused. Like, he's like the guy, Luther was like, you're the one. And like the other guy ended up getting captured and murdered basically, but he didn't tell anybody else that they were accused of it.
I think they were just running.
So Fox
Yeah.
Fox had a hard time cooperating on set. And
Really?
they ended up killing his character off.
Is
He
that
was
what
being
happened?
Why he died.
problematic.
He's
You
a
know,
little
I was
problematic.
wondering why that was such an abrupt
Yeah.
thing that like was never discussed again. Like, oh hey, where's our one friend? Right?
Yeah.
Like nobody even talked about it. I'm like, wow, that's some shitty friends.
Yeah, there was some problems on set, and they had to get rid of the guy.
Apparently, the actor kept leaving early to go just like get high and mess around. And
Oh.
We got to remember too. The actor that played Ajax, he was originally going to be Corporal Hicks in Aliens,
Yes.
and he had a drug problem. So
Yes, he
this
did.
this is just it's 80s New York, man. So there's a lot going on that we're not seeing
Yeah.
that wasn't documented wise.
Oh, for sure. It's very interesting, and I think there's a lot of threads left undone. Like, this was clearly a movie put on a budget where there was a lot of questions left over, but ultimately, if you just answer, it doesn't matter. The journey is the point. Like, we didn't know, we didn't assume that I always assumed that the original leader, the original warlord of the
Yeah.
Warriors, didn't die, and somehow he was captured by the the riffs, and at some point they just didn't believe him when he said, "No, my team didn't do this."
Yeah.
And at some point, something was going to come out, and he would, save them, or something would happen. They'd have to rescue him, or something like that. But that just didn't happen. And I thought the whole journey of the Rifts kind of sucked because the Rifts didn't really get involved. They were just this menacing force from a distance until right at the end. They played it off like, well, you don't know if they're going to go after the Warriors because this guy told them something.
Yeah.
We all knew what it was.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
it's the end of the movie. We know what he was told. And it just felt like this guy showing up like, oh, I suddenly know what happened. Felt lazy writing, I think is the best way to put it. Deus Ex witness.
Yeah.
I think the thing with the Rifts, though, is you have to see the evolution of a street gang to a mob.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Rifts were there and they were asked, they were hunting for information,
Yeah.
not people.
Yeah.
They wanted to know what the fuck was going on their streets and in the Rifts city.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. Somebody else will get them. Right. The thing with the Rifts is the Rifts, you see it, like you don't see it at all, but you can immediately assume, and kind of it quickly evolves, especially with what Cyrus was trying to say. We're going to own nightclubs. We're going to run the people. It's money. It's power. Right. We can be like the Italian or the Irish mob. We can unite and outnumber them because the gangs and it's the cops. It's not the mob. It's not the Irish. It's not the Germans. It's not the Italians. It's none of that. It is just what, 15, 16, 17, 22-year-olds kind of thing. Like it's youth. This is a very useful film and not them running in with guns, robbing a bank. Or robbing a corner store. This is just very low-level petty crimes under below a minimum wage gap.
It's kids stealing chocolate bars from a newsstand and then
Exactly.
like throwing them at people and like
And
just
one of them
stupid
gets
petty crime.
One of them gets a gun.
Yeah.
They steal beer. They drive around all night. They don't pay for gas. One of them gets a gun and takes something too far.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And it
no, I
is
totally get
not.
that.
It is
Yeah.
not political. It is not. We run the police. It is not. None of that. It is not. It is not The Godfather.
Yeah.
It's not The Godfather Part 2 either. Right. It isn't. It isn't Scarface. This is just. This is a movie of goons.
Yeah.
This is henchmen.
Yeah.
This is such a low-level henchman movie,
And
and you
these-
don't see.
Right.
One thing I never quite understood is are these? I'm guessing there's more warriors.
I think this
in
is
the
it.
gang
I think this is it.
because they imply that the warrior gangs is not the smallest gang, right? Orphans are clearly below them, or at least in notoriety.
Yeah.
And yet they had to send all 9 of their delegates, all 9 of their people as
I think
delegates.
I think they are part of a bigger gang. They just
Yeah.
didn't go back to their base. It just didn't show the rest of
They
them.
had to get back to them first.
Because I think the only ones that showed the entirety of the gang were the orphans and the Rifts.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm assuming everyone else was just the 9.
Yeah.
Other
I think
than
the skinheads got
Yeah, yeah.
all of them because they had a whole bus
Oh yeah,
full.
the Mad Max bus.
the Turnbull ACs.
I think the
Oh,
thing is,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they showed the big one. There was only a couple that actually showed the full numbers.
I think the difference too is nobody really wanted to fuck with Coney Island because it was so far away.
Yeah.
Right. When you
Yeah.
look in the beginning and you see the subway station map and they're like, where do we got to go? And it's like fucking from
At the
here
very end.
to the roof to the basement. And it's like,
Also-
oh my God, nobody bothers. So that's their turf. What do we want the beach for? In the winter?
Yeah,
When
I
it
do
freezes
love-
over, there's no money to be made in Coney Island.
I do love that intro because the whole opening credits is them going, okay, here's the subway station to here. Like, basically, they're setting up, here's the path they're going to be taking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Load up the map.
Load up the map. Here's your mini map of what they're going to be doing so that
Yeah.
when they're on the way back, you kind of get a sense of, oh, yeah, no, they're taking a tour.
Yeah. Well, didn't
Yeah.
they say that even the direct route was an hour-long transit? Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's going to take us an hour to get there if we're going exactly where we need to. It's like, yeah, that would absolutely take an entire night
Ever.
to, fuck around a bunch of different transfers and actually be able to get there.
I think the randomness too that you talked about with the trains and always going back to the train is also brought up with the idea of how do we get our characters off the train because they're safe when they're on the train.
Yeah.
They're on the boat.
Yeah.
No one can fuck with them on the boat until someone sets the train tracks on fire or someone sets like what is the thing to get them off.
Yes.
To run into more conflict.
Yeah.
And that's where that randomness kind of comes in. And it's not excusable as much as it's just high school kids that didn't go to college, dropouts that are like, fuck, we got to stop these guys. How do we get them? How do we draw them out? So it is random fucking little acts of petty crime.
I don't mean that. I just mean it felt like each time they got off the train, it was disconnected from the last
yeah.
time they got on the train.
Yeah.
It's almost
yes.
like each night feels like a different night of shooting.
Yeah.
Kinda. Kinda.
Yeah, it's exactly right. The other thing I never really gathered, I think I kind of gathered it, was, and I don't even know her name.
Mercy.
Mercy. Was
Oh, she actually
Mercy's...
had a name?
Yeah, Mercy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was
All
Mercy's story plot, as far as I can tell, she was a part of the orphans, and she wanted for more.
She wanted to become a warrior.
She wanted more. Yeah, she wanted to become a warrior. So she left the orphans, joined the warriors because she hated the orphans being like a bunch of bitches.
Yep.
Well, they're just such a low-level gang, and she's like, yeah, he's like, look, we were in the paper, like, oh, look at this, and they had to kind of play it up, but they ran away from a car on fire.
Yo, when they light that car on fire, though, I had a hard chuckle in me. I love it. Fuck you.
Like,
They
she
all pass the
wanted-
Molotov to each other, and then he rips her dress, and then it's like, watch this. And it's like, oh, fuck you.
So I just think she wanted more, because like she said, like, yeah, like she's running with a low-level gang. You can assume that she's like with the guys, and she's like, I'm sick of this. I'm in a shitty neighborhood. I want something more exciting. I want my life to be something better, I guess. Still being within the gangs, but more something, yeah, more.
She wanted more with herself.
It's the Harley Quinn scenario when
Yeah.
they go, I'm a fucking doctor. What am I doing here?
Yeah, she's smart.
And there's brief
She-
moments of clarity where she's like, I went to school for this. Stop calling me a dumb bitch. Like, whoa.
Yeah, she is very smart.
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you doing? You're going to let them walk all over you just because they complimented you? Like, what are you going to, like, that's how you're going to lose your turf. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
Yeah.
I never got the impression she was smart in any sense.
Yeah, I
she's,
didn't
like,
get that
street
she was...
smart.
She's a hooker.
I
under-
think she's a hooker.
She was a hooker.
She very much implied she was a hooker.
yeah,
Never
and
Friday
that's-
night, Saturday nights are even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
less
Well, that's why
memorable.
Swan's like, I don't like how you're living. And she's like, well,
I don't like how you're living.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're
pretty
not
much.
better than me.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I have to do to survive.
Yeah.
I absolutely... One thing I thought was very important, the only scene where I went, ooh, that's rough, was the scene where they get to a safe point, they're on the train, and it's Swan and Mercy sitting there, and right across from them are the nicer upper class
The disco kids.
The
people,
disco kids,
the
yeah.
disco kids, and she's just looking rough, and she's trying to like make herself look pretty. Swan's just like, honey, you don't stand a chance looking, like just stop. You're all mucked up.
I don't
I
think
think
that's the
I
example
think
at all.
it was don't let them make you feel like you're not as
Less than.
Yeah,
Less
less
than.
than. Like, don't show them your weakness.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that she sort of passed out because, like, yeah, that's an intense night that they're going through. She just passes out for a few moments on the train and they disappear. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really, really good and powerful scene.
Yeah.
It's a
bit of
moment
classism.
of calm
Yeah.
that just shows like there's no dialogue. It's all body language. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, here's like, the life that they could have had.
Yes.
And she's like, fuck.
And I actually think that was probably the only moment in the entire film that had any kind of character development whatsoever, where you actually got an insight into a character and not just a bunch of mook fucks running around a city doing things as they see fit randomly, whatever. There was actual, I don't know, insight and or I don't want to call it growth, because there really was no character growth for anybody in that film. But I don't know. It was something other than just being a generic hooligan.
Angsty youth.
Angsty,
Like,
yeah.
They don't necessarily need to learn anything as much as it's just we have to get our people home.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this
In one
wasn't a
piece.
movie necessarily that needed any kind of character development. There was no like story necessary, no deeper meaning, but it was just, I think that was like the only moment of the film where I went, oh, they actually do have a character. Okay.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Interesting fact about Mercy, though. I didn't realize how much she just disappears. Because a few
Yeah.
times I'm like, okay, they all separated. I seen her run with Fox. And then she would always just pop back up. And
Yeah.
it's like, was she just like she was just in hiding, I guess. Just she knew where they were meeting, I guess.
Yeah. I lost
She broke
track.
her arm on production.
Yeah, and then she
And
came
that's
back
why
with
she
a coat.
came back with the coat.
To hide her cast.
So there's a reason why she just disappears.
Oh,
That's
I see.
hilarious.
This movie is fast and loose. We have $4 million in 2 months.
That makes so
That's
much more
casting
sense.
Fucking costumes.
Because then
It's
she
like,
has a-
we have no money.
There was a
Yeah,
time
yeah.
where Swan's like, she shows up with the jacket out of nowhere, and Swan, first of all, Swan's like, well, I thought you were with, what's her name? Like, wait, I forgot even what happened to her.
Right.
Was she just, as far as
just
I can tell, I forgot
disappeared.
about her existence.
Yeah.
Well, she was with Fox. And she got away when Fox was like wrestling with the cop.
Yeah.
Got
got
thrown
thrown
on
on
the
the
tracks.
So she
yeah.
should have been visually more upset.
Well, she didn't really know him. Also,
Still,
fun-
your buddy died.
A thing
Or
too-
someone you just recently
There was
saw
a-
just
there
got
was a
fucking
murder.
splattered across the rails.
Unless that happens every day in New York City in a bad neighborhood that she lives in. And a lot of this stuff that we were kind of like, you all said, hey, this happened in one night. And none of these characters sort of seem fazed by it besides the, oh shit, we didn't do the murder.
Oh, in the
And a lot of
morning,
it was
they'll-
just like, oh, they'll feel it.
In
but
the morning, they'll feel it.
yeah, but a lot of it does feel like, oh no, we got drunk, got in a fight. This girl won't leave me alone. We're in a bad part of town. Like, this is just every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll have
Kind of
the adrenaline hangover in the morning, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
They'll feel bad, miss their friends, they'll cry, have drinks,
Yeah, yeah.
so on and so forth.
She was actually supposed to be the love interest of Fox.
Oh.
But on screen, like they did like the
switcheroo.
they had no chemistry together. But they noticed the filming, like during filming, that her and Michael Beck, who played Swan, had chemistry. So they wrote her as his love interest because he was supposed to be. I think they said in the commentary it was like he was supposed to get captured and be held prisoner for a while.
So
and
they were
he was
writing
supposed
this
to-
while they were
Yeah,
filming.
they had no money.
I know that that's pretty
Wow.
normal. I know that that's fairly normal, but like to this degree of change,
they totally
is not
changed.
normal.
And then it turned out that he was problematic, and they had to kill his character off anyway. But yeah, he was supposed to like have more development where he was going to get captured and grilled and be like, "What do you mean
Interrogated,
you
yeah.
interrogated, and
Yeah.
then escape, and then have that whole arc."
Yeah.
But instead, they gave him him and Mercy having their moments together
Interesting.
in the tracks and all that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it felt kind of it definitely felt had some level of disconnection, but it had some deep thoughts in it too.
There's
that
some ideas.
weren't deeply explored, but were explored enough. And I thought there was a really good statement right at the end where Swan shows up and goes, "Wait, we did all this for this?"
For nothing.
yeah.
For nothing. We
Edit
all.
that out.
Yeah, that's all good.
Well, it goes back to Cyrus's. We mentioned it before. Like, yeah, like why are we all fighting over our little 10 blocks or whatever? We can band together and be so much better. But he's like, hey, this is it. Because you see stuff, you see it in this daylight. It looks a lot worse in the daylight than it does at night.
Yeah, neon light and wet, rainy
Yeah.
streets look cool as hell. But
Sure.
when
See how
you see the
grimy,
garbage and the
cool.
sick and
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what part of the journey that Swan and Mercy went through, which was Mercy clearly has a drive for more.
right,
And throughout this night, Mercy still isn't, when she says more, she means bigger, better gang.
right,
But Swan, throughout the course of this, takes that feeling of more and passes it through his experiences of life is shit here and comes back out with not more, different. Better, different,
Right.
gone from this.
Right.
And I think that was an interesting character spin through because if you had just had Swan, he would have been stuck to his brotherhood and he would have stayed there. If you just had Mercy, she still would have been in gangs, maybe bigger gangs, but it's still, what's the difference?
Right.
But the fact that the two of them kind of filtered this feeling, this thought, this drive through each other drove them to be like, oh no, this is not what we want for our future.
yeah, we got to
Yeah.
get out of this because
Yeah.
we're not going to last much longer.
and
if
him
we
being
stay
the
in this.
newly appointed gang, the warlord, because he was, I believe he was a second in command.
Yeah.
And then him now having to be the leader and trying to keep everyone safe. And then you had that conflict in the beginning where Ajax was like, well, who made you the leader? And everyone's like, oh man, let's just get home. We'll figure this out later.
right.
Yeah. Now's not the time to fight.
You can, because Swan immediately
Yeah.
steps up and says, "Listen, if you want to throw down, let's throw down." But like we already lost 2 men or a man.
Yeah.
And the Swan goes through that progression of just like a squad leader losing people in his squad.
Yeah.
And he keeps losing and losing more people.
Yeah.
And then they show up empty-handed in their home and it's just destroyed and there's nothing. And the gangs can just march in and take whatever they want from them and they try to arm up to protect themselves. And then the Rifts come in and say, okay, you're good. You're done. You're done. Tag, you're it. We're going to take them. We're out of here.
I think
But
they get a little
the
bit
general,
respect.
The general vibe is either they're disassemble the warriors or they get more respect.
I think they definitely got more respect because they could have made it through all the gangs if they taken off their colors, but they showed strength in getting through, not just strength in getting through with their colors, but getting through all these other gangs
Right.
and surviving it. I think the Rifts looked at them and said, oh, you're cool. Like, you're powerful.
Yeah. Well, the Rifts at the end did make the comment of like, oh, you know, you guys are the best, right? Like he kind of made that comment of like, we see that you guys are impressive and we notice, we respect that kind of thing.
You're protected by the rifts at this point.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, no one's going to come down here because if you think about, like you said, who's going to want Coney Island? There's only one train in and out. So if you do get an army to come to, you're basically like the Sparta, like the 300. You're funneling them in to a small area, and it's like, hey, good luck getting out. We're going to kick your ass.
So let me ask you guys then: does this hold up? Would we remake it?
I definitely think it could do with a remake.
Yeah.
I think I think not only could it be done better, I think it has been done better by other movies, but none of the other movies that I'm talking about do it in the same gang style. Right. But I don't know if we want to. I don't think you want a one for one. I think you want to take the ideas that are here, bring it into the future in some, like, to the present day and somehow. Yeah. And you could still make a great movie out of this, because I think it's an imperfect movie that could do with a bigger budget. Really, it's. I think the director's got a good idea. I think he just needed more money and more time.
Yeah, I think we did get this in a way. I think of a lot of video game side quests. Yeah, I think of a lot of, okay, you're at point A, get back to point B. Yeah, good luck. Yeah, and then everyone is like gunning for you. I feel like this whole segment or film itself has been, I wouldn't say cheaply imitated, but it has been impressioned. Where you have seen a lot of films kind of, you've seen directors or actors who have watched this movie and went, cool. And then that's it. But then they make their own art and they make their own thing, or they write their own little scene. It might not even be dialogue, but you do get those moments where you're like, this has got fingerprints of the Warriors on it. Yeah. It might not be a complete ripoff, but there's definitely fingerprints all throughout kind of film, especially within the action movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the first one that I think of is The Raid, right? Isn't the whole premise of The Raid, they are trying to like get out of this building?
See,
and it's like
that's a little bit more of Enter the Dragon, though.
Yeah, that's a bit more Enter the Dragon, Die Hard kind of thing, or Dread, the newer Dread.
Yeah.
It's more like that because that's one guy, one tower.
Okay, fair enough.
This is a group of people trying to get from point A to point B through a city.
You know, it's funny actually. The entire time that I watched this, my one thought was, I feel like I want to see a remake of this done in Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah,
that'd be
because their costumes were very kind of reminiscent of that like over the top ridiculousness that is the fashion of Cyberpunk. And I feel like in that setting, this story would work out really well because you have all the gangs, you have the city, you could literally just redo this with that flavor on top. And I think it would actually be really cool. I mean, I'm biased because I really like Cyberpunk and I just want to see that in any sense, but I feel like it would work really well in like a more like modern future set. It is very much like a video game quest. You're absolutely right.
So the first Cyberpunk, the first edition, came out in 1988. So
they have seen this.
Yeah, they've seen this.
You're right.
Also, Enter the Dragon 73, Raid was 2000. Raid was 2011, and then Dread, I think, was 2012.
That makes sense. But those, I think, those are a different category than this. Those are not from point A to point B. Those are, you're stuck in here with me, not
get to the top or get to the bottom.
It's like Escape from LA in New York.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
Yeah, it's a little bit different concept. No, I think the whole Cyberpunk thing works because there's a misconception with Cyberpunk where everyone thinks it's retro punk or cyber wave. Cyberpunk is not like that. It's more like this, where it is, it's a little bit more 90s, where it's, the leather just like this, but it's got the spikes. It's
hyper stylized,
but it's more AC/DC, Led Zeppelin than it is synthwave, and I think that's why.
What are you talking about?
Cyberpunk, the tabletop,
is AC/DC and Led Zeppelin.
He thinks it's more
what are you talking about?
It's more freedom rock.
More alt punk
more
than
freedom
it is
house music and like hard techno.
Yes. That's what it was originally designed off of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it had the synth wave in there, but it was mostly about the freedom of rock and the freedom of get drunks, fuck the system. It was more about that. And this portrays that, which is why you feel that. It's just add a little bit of synth.
I'd argue it'd be even a little bit more of an alternative stand base if we're going to talk about cyberpunk briefly,
definitely.
where it's a little bit more heavily within the new wave and punk scene than AC/DC or Led Zeppelin.
Oh, definitely.
I think the AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, unfortunately, in that time period would have been, this is what your dad or your grandfather listens to. And fuck that.
You say that, but remember back then, back in the 70s, they were the punk of their time. They were the anti-establishment of their time.
Right, but the
I
tabletop
guess.
game was written in the 80s.
88,
So
yeah.
it would have been the complete opposite of that. That would have been the uncool music.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, do we want to do the eyebrows?
Oh, it's that time.
I think it's that time. Shall we bridge those brows? Unite.
Can you dig it?
Can you dig it? Ladies, let's go. Welcome to a podcast within a podcast. We're going to go around the table real quick, and we are going to do the eyebrows. There is a full-on cast of characters and unique costumes, but there are definitely the things we mainly focus on within the show. Was there any costume, wig character that really kind of stood out?
Oh no!
Yes.
Oh god, the lazy-eyed orphan character
Oh,
that
no.
I said was the missing link between a chimpanzee and Adam Driver.
Oh,
I
that was
cannot
mean.
get him
That
out
was
of
mean.
my head.
That was so mean. That was so mean.
You're talking about Sully.
That
that
was
his
so
name?
mean.
Sully.
I would have just simply said probably the Baseball Fury bros, because that was such a memorable and unique, iconic
mean,
character.
yeah.
Are you talking about the one with the
Oh.
blue and
Just in general, the Baseball Furies.
Did they paint their brows on, or did they paint over their brows? I don't remember. Did they
over.
I
It's
think they
almost
went
like
full
clown
mime.
makeup. They
Yeah.
went full clown makeup in a way.
Yeah.
There was one Bat Fury. I think he was the main one.
Cobb?
I don't know
The one with the yellow face paint?
No, I think it was the blue and the white.
I think his name is Thurman.
There's one where he's
They all have
running.
names.
yeah.
Rockstar made a video game, a beat 'em up about this. So
even have,
everybody
like,
got
I need to
names
find
and
this game.
credits.
What console
PlayStation
generation?
2.
PlayStation 2.
The Baseball
Holy
Furies
crap.
are rivals with everybody.
Yeah.
There's like a list of 10, including the Lizzies.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
There was one where he was running and he had this like huge grin. And it
Yeah.
looked so goofy with the face paint and just these teeth sticking
Yeah.
out. And it just caught me so unawares. And it just, it stuck in my brain that I couldn't let it go. So
Dope.
that one, I don't remember. I think it was the blue and white painted guy.
Yeah.
He
And it just
redid it?
shocked me.
That's awesome.
They redid it for PS4.
Yeah, it's great.
I,
It's great. It's a great beat 'em up.
Amazing.
It's a great beat 'em up. We'll watch the
think
trailer when we're done
If
the
we're
show.
talking about eyebrows, the main guy in the punks, the Vance, the one with the roller skates, his eyebrows were
yeah.
so bushy.
Oh yes, they were.
Like he
my
was like
goodness.
classic like feathered curly hair and like just like looked angry all the time, but he was trying to look so menacing while just slowly roller skating.
I mean, that's
He
the
was
funny
Michael
thing. Yeah.
Myersing with
On
his
roller
voice.
skates?
My
so good.
favorite
he totally
Halloween on roller on ice.
my favorite
Yes. Bring out the whole family for the fun on ice.
my favorite
John
thing
Carpenter's cult classic with John Carpenter himself doing the score.
My favorite thing though is when he told Mercy just to like back off and go away, and she just popped up, and he had been followed
yeah.
for like probably like a while, and they're all just sitting behind him 20 feet, just looking like menacingly at his back, and he's pretending not to see them, and she's like, not even quietly, you know they're right there, right? They've been following you, and he's like, well now they know, and it's like
Now they know I know.
they're literally 20 feet behind
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
some scenes.
Like, oh
It's-
my god.
There's some stuff that is obviously unforgivable in a way, or some stuff you have to kind of look past, but definitely. So, Nintendo Geek, besides the scenes, what are your final thoughts? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it?
Well, like most movies, I continue to like it. Like same with Lost Boys. I've seen this around the same time in like grade 10 or grade 11. So like it was like, it's funny rewatching it now because when you first see it, like, you know, I was a teenager, I'm like, oh my god, so much is going on. Holy crap!
I want to get in a fight.
You don't
don't.
really-
Tonight for fighting.
No,
well,
you
I
don't.
know we're dissecting it now, but you don't really see the cracks. Like when you're like, I guess younger, you're just like, holy crap, like what is happening? Like they need to get back. It's intense. Holy crap. But yeah, now it's like, okay, I can see like there's plot holes. There's probably things they wanted to do,
Yeah.
but couldn't. He was basing it off a book and also trying to adapt it from the book, but make it less realistic, but also changing the script on a fly depending on like what the actors were feeling that day. So like, And you're also filming in New York where people are literally like, I don't care that you're filming. I'm walking through here. Try to stop me.
I'm walking here.
I need to get to fucking work.
Well, on top of that too,
Yeah,
right?
or
Like,
just weird people at night, 3 a.m, being like, hey, like, what are you doing here? And it's like, whoa, hey. So I think they had a lot of like police officers just around to like protect the crew and all that. But like, anyway, I enjoy it. I continue to like it. It's like a once a year movie.
it is a good movie for that.
Yeah. It's fun to put on in the background.
Cool. Flavia and Amanda,
Yes.
thoughts, prayers. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I really did enjoy it. I wasn't too keen on it at the beginning. You're right. It has a lot of glaring holes and things that just are inexcusable by today's movie standards.
Yeah.
But it was a fun watch. It was a fun, silly, beat 'em up, weird costume ganged romp through New York, and I don't know, I really did enjoy it for what it was. I'll probably give it like, 7 shiny yellow embroidered jackets out of 10.
Dope.
Sorry, one more thing. I will give a shout out, like an honorable mention. I don't know her name, but the costume designer, like I was saying earlier, she literally got like a list of names and had to come up with patches, makeup, outfits for like everybody. And the fact that like you can see like there's a lot that went into this, and I would love to see like an art book of just like how much work went into it, even though you didn't even see half the gangs.
I could definitely flip through like a soft cover, just kind of like,
Oh,
here's the subway.
absolutely,
The
yeah.
subway is
But-
what you see when you first open it, and then you flip through it and everything, and it's all the different gangs and what
Minus
their
the
names were.
money limitations, I think that as a costume designer, that's kind of a dream of like, here's a name. Go design something based on that.
Yeah,
The-
absolute freedom.
aside from the money
Creative.
limitations,
Yeah.
that's the only
Yeah.
problem is you got to do it within this really tight budget.
Yeah.
I can see that being a limitation, but the freedom of just like, here's just a name, the Electro Boys. Go figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, what would they look like? Oh, like what would the Rogues look like? Like
Yeah.
what would the Baseball Furies? Like that's like I just want to give an honorable mention to her.
It's a fun concept.
Oh yeah, it's like, hey, come up with the stuff and then go thrifting. Go to Value Village. Go to Salvation Army. Go find like random
We need 10
eclectic
of them, though.
stuff. Yeah,
We need 10 yellow
Yeah.
jackets.
At that
We
point,
true.
they go to like warehouse
Yeah.
central.
Yeah, it's true. They'll
the
go
clothes
bulk-
that didn't
bulk
sell,
lines. Yeah.
at that season,
and
they
that's
go
what you put
figure it out.
together, though, which is awesome for a gangs. Plebby and Adam, thoughts, prayers. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it?
I think it was good.
Yeah.
I don't think it was top tier amazing. It
no.
didn't keep me a movie. I know when a movie's really good when I'm sitting there not shifting.
Yeah.
When I don't notice my own body. This is not that kind of movie. Like I said, it brought me out of it a few times. There were some plot holes that made my brain go, what? There was things that were like, wait, what just happened? There was scenes where, a train was coming and I thought it was going to hit some of our protagonists.
Yeah.
And they just never showed how they got out of that problem.
Right.
And then with Mercy, there's times when she just disappeared and showed up again.
Yeah.
Things didn't fully make sense, but there were some good comeuppance. Ajax got his comeuppance. He's kind of a feminist, and his feminine ways.
He is not a feminist.
Sorry, not a
Is it
feminist.
sexist?
No, not a
womanizer.
womanizer.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's what I
Oh.
meant. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Feminist Warler.
Thank you, feminist word.
Yeah, I am the warlord.
Yeah. Sorry, use the wrong word. He's clearly womanizer, and he's a shithead for it.
Yeah.
And that act and that thing that he is a shithead for is what gets his comeuppance, and I think he deserves it. And I think that's great, and that's a good twist and a good, good thing in the movie. But ultimately, I think it was a good movie, not a great movie. So I'd probably say 6.57.
I'll take a 6.5 or 7 from you any day of the week. Honestly, I really loved it. I thought it's not perfect. It's got a lot of holes. It's dented. It's bent. It's been dropped a few times. But there are some really cool ideas. It is definitely a product of its time. It is definitely New York. It is definitely the late 70s, early 80s, kind of rough and tough. And it is, it's entertaining. It's dumb. It's comic booky. It's video game. It's a video game movie in today's standards, but it is definitely enjoyable. And I would recommend you see it. I wouldn't recommend that you need to rewatch it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But I do definitely understand that. I understand and see the reasons why or how it became a cult hit.
Oh, for sure.
I definitely get why this is somebody's jam. Like,
Yes.
This
Oh, yeah.
is definitely
This inspired a lot
Saturday
of our
night-
current movie makers, and I can see
Yeah,
why.
like even like this and like a Saturday Night Fever double feature with like John Travolta, where it's just like gritty, beat to shit New York, and everyone's doing coke and bloody.
Well, you said too, like if they didn't at the original release, they were getting so much backlash from it because people would watch this thing go mess up cities. So I guess they gave theater owners the right to be like, hey, you don't have to show this anymore. And it bombed
Really?
at the box office. Like it only made, I think, what, 3 to 5 million? Originally.
Wow.
Most of the money it made came later.
It's a street gang movie for street gangs.
And it caused
Not
people
for street
to go
gangs.
do crimes.
Go do crimes.
And they're like, whoa. And then Paramount, I guess, had to offer to pay off a bunch of damages. So it didn't really, it was like, yeah, but it really ramped people up. Like Cyrus to be like, go out and go against the police
Yeah.
and rage against the machine.
Yeah, I guess it
So
really
I
was
think
that
without
era.
that, it would have probably went on to make a sequel if they would have made more money. Because you
Maybe.
could have just kept going.
Yeah, true.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have wanted to see a sequel, to be honest, because this kind of sold a tight story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's where the comic books and the video game is kind of like, okay, let's see the continuation of this if you want to know more about what happened or...
The video games themselves, I believe, you play through the plot of the game or the movie,
Oh, okay.
just because of how video gamey it is.
Yeah.
And you just work your way through subway station and subway stops and stuff like that. But yeah, but that was that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you for joining us tonight on a
Anytime.
wonderful episode of Raised by Spoilers. You can find us at RBS Pod on all the social medias. I'm one of your hosts, Geek Movie House. I want to thank the rest of the crew. Feminist Warlord, where can people find you?
Nintendo Geek, Twitter, Instagram. I still haven't figured out Twitter.
Nobody
Still
has.
working on it.
For $8, you can be verified apparently now.
Oh, I could. I can
You
become
could.
a very important person.
You could too can change your name to Elon Musk. Adam, what do you got going on, and where can people find you?
You can find me also at the Ronin Geek podcast and on Twitter at Ronin Geekery.
Fantastic. Hit us up on the social medias. Let us know if there's a movie you want to hear us talk about, or at least let us know if you can dig it and what you thought of The Warriors. Don't forget to like, comment, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And good night, everyone. Thank you very much.